Greetings. I've been doing some more printing in DXO PhotoLab 8, and I thought I might go over a few of the changes to the image when preparing it for print. So one of the main ones is lens sharpness optimization. We can see that on the right here. I've used a few different papers for this image. I've done some printouts and we're going to have a closer look. But it's a little difficult with my current camera to see those fine details. So I'm going to show you here the best I can. So I'm just going to show you what I'm talking about when it comes to sharpening the image for print. And these are just my experiences with the program. Also with the printer and paper combination that I'm using. And I'm using a few different papers here so we can see examples of different types of paper. What I'll do here, I'll come to the light module to start with. You see, I've increased the exposure, just a few changes here. Just change a bit of the tone curve. I've added the vignetting this time by default. I've let DXO handle that. On the color tab here, this was a custom preset that I created for this image. I used a color checker. Also, I used the white patch to create the white balance within this image, and this is the result that we get. It was a later afternoon photograph. So if I come down, I've just added a little bit of vibrance to the image, nothing too much. In the HSL, here there was a out of color gamut, so I just reduced the saturation of this color here. If I come down, we can see the soft proofing that I was using. This is a custom ICC profile that I created for the Ilford Smooth Cotton Sprite paper. So if I come to the detail next, this is where I want to show what's happening. If anybody's interested in printing through DXO, they may have different experiences, but this is how I've found using the program when it comes to printing. Now, for this kind of image, I applied different amounts of sharpness compared to a portrait photo. So I'll zoom in here. If we watch my previous video on printing with DXO, the first video I did on PhotoLab 8, when we zoom in, if we look at the percentage here, if I zoom into the area under the carriage here, we can see when we get to 70%, it still doesn't look sharp. It's not rendering that sharpness until we get to 75%. So let's just scroll in one more time. And now we can see that sharpness come into effect. So if I was to leave it as the default, if I double click on here, we can see it set to 1. But I really started to dial it back. I didn't want to over sharpen the image from the previous prints that I've had when it comes to detail, and just to dial this back and not to have it over sharpening. So this will come down to your experience as well, your printer and paper combination with DXO PhotoLab 8. So if I just take that down just a bit more, we can still see the nice detail here without going too far. Now the paper that I'm using for these images, they render quite fine detail as it is. And with the texture of the paper in some of the examples, the texture in the paper also enhances the sharpening. So that's another thing to keep in mind. This is what I mean by the experience you have with your printer and paper combination. So in this image here that I've printed on different paper types, I've reduced this and allowed the paper to also help with the sharpening of the image itself, the detail. So now if I just scroll back out. So let's just go back to the color tab. And as I mentioned earlier, in the soft proofing, this is the Ilford Smooth Cotton Sprite paper. Now I left it on perceptual, again, if you watched my last video, I don't rely on the simulate paper and ink, but we can turn it on and see what it gives us. I printed this image on a few different paper types. This smooth cotton Sprite is actually a warmer paper, so if I just turn that off again, we should be able to see how the clouds warm up, and we can see how the tone changes within the clouds and also on the carriages here. So let me just turn that on again. We can see how the tone of the image changes. Because the paper, the Ilford Smooth Cotton Sprite, is an actual warmer type of paper. The previous video was with the Ilford Matte Duo, and it has a very high white point. Now, it's, how could I explain this? A more neutral white, if I could say that. But in this Smooth Cotton Sprite is an actual warm tone to the paper. So when we have an image, it may lend itself to more of a more warmer tone of image, such as an afternoon photograph. So as I mentioned before, it does come down to personal experience and what you print on and how you want your image to look. So we're looking at one of the printouts here using DXO PhotoLab 8, the print module. And as I was mentioning, when sharpening the image for print and not over sharpening, when it comes to the paper, to allow also the paper to do a bit of the sharpening for you. Now, I think this is important, that it will come down to experience with the paper, with your printer, with the software that's doing the sharpening for your actual print. And this may take a while to dial in the sharpness that you want, also the colors, the contrast, depending on your experience. But DXO, I think, has actually done quite a fine job when it comes to the sharpening in the image, and I'm hoping this does come up on video. I know I'm a little bit cropped in here for the video, but if we can see here, the detail within the writing underneath the carriage here is sharp without being over sharp, and it's very clear to see. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but the sharpness of the lettering underneath the carriage on each one of these that are in focus, I think I dialed in the right amount of sharpness. Now, this area here was my point of focus, but if you look along the rails here, if you can see on the video, the detail is quite fine without looking overdone. Also, the gradients in the blues, the blue sky, come out quite nice. And I think the results most people may get at home, they can get quite fine quality out of DXO. You can see the different colors here now. I'll just push this up a little bit. We can see here, one of the things I had come across in DXO is I had the color gamut on for the color information, and I just toned back the colors in the sign here, and I just dialed them back here just to be a bit careful of them out of gamut colors, and it seems to render the colors fine. So hopefully on the video we can actually see how fine this detail is. I've over sharpened images before, and it almost looks crunchy. It's hard to explain. When you see it, you know that you've gone too far. Especially in portraits, you can really see how things need to be dialed back when it comes to sharpening within an image, depending on what the photograph is. Like a portrait, we may have to dial that back even more because those details in the face can really show up quite harshly, I think, in a print, and depending on what kind of paper you're using. So this paper here is very different. This is the Ilford Smooth Cotton Sprite, and hopefully we can see again the detail that it can produce within the image. Now, this was a late afternoon photograph. We can probably tell in the video, hopefully, that it has a warm tone to the image. A late afternoon, we can see that late afternoon sunshine on the buildings here. But this paper has a natural warm tone to it, and it lends itself, if you could say that, towards this kind of image, towards an afternoon photograph. But as we can see, the actual texture of the paper, this is a cotton paper, so hopefully we can see the texture on the paper there. It creates a stippling effect, if I could say that, and it adds to the sharpening of the image. It's hard to explain, but when you see it, you can really notice how different textures of paper can affect your image. Okay, so we have here the same image on two different paper types. Again, this is the Ilford Smooth Cotton Sprite, the warmer tone of paper. But as I mentioned before, the particular paper you may choose, or that we choose to print our images on, with a bit of experience, we can work out how much sharpening we need within the file in the software when we start to export it to print, like in DXO PhotoLab 8, when we dial in our settings, and then we can send it off to the print module in the software. And again, it's done a really nice job with that detail. It hasn't gone too far, shows up some nice reflections. It's really done quite a good job from my personal experience and what I'm seeing in front of me here. Here again of the carriages, two different temperatures for this photo. You can see on the right here, it's a little bit warmer. I've made some adjustments just with these sliders from memory. Now these images are a little bit smaller, so it's definitely going to be difficult to see the fine detail within the video, but there's no haloing, there's no artifacting. The gradients in the blue sky are very smooth. You can see a little bit of warmth in the cloud there as I adjusted this image to be a little bit warmer. On here we can see it's a little bit cooler. You can see the colours are a little bit deeper on this side when it comes to the blue. Come out quite nice. So that's it for the video, and peace be unto you.